population which, since 1831, must have increased at least 20 to 25% further. In 1835 the spinning of wool employed in the United Kingdom 1,313 mills, with 71,300 workers, these last being but a small portion of the multitude who are supported directly or indirectly by the manufacture of wool, and excluding nearly all weavers. Progress in the linen trade developed later, because the nature of the raw material made the application of spinning machinery very difficult. Attempts had been made in the last years of the last century in Scotland, but the Frenchman, Girard, who introduced flax spinning in 1810, was the first who succeeded practically, and even Girard's machines first attained on British soil the importance they deserved by means of improvements which they underwent in England, and of their universal application in Leeds, Dundee, and Belfast. From this time the British linen trade rapidly extended. In 1814, 3,000 tons of flax were imported. In 1833, nearly 19,000 tons of flax and 3,400 tons of hemp. The export of Irish linen to Great Britain rose from 32 million yards in 1800 to 53 million in 1825, of which a large part was re-exported. The export of English and Scotch woven linen goods rose from 24 million yards in 1820 to 51 million yards in 1833. The number of flax spinning establishments in 1835 was 347, employing 33,000 workers, of which one half were in the south of Scotland, more than 60 in the West Riding of Yorkshire, Leeds, and its environs, 25 in Belfast, Ireland, and the rest in Dorset and Lancashire. Weaving is carried on in the south of Scotland, here and there in England, but principally in Ireland. With like success did the English turn their attention to the manufacture of silk. Raw material was imported from southern Europe and Asia ready spun, and the chief labor lay in the twisting of fine threads. Until 1824 the heavy import duty, 4 shillings per pound on raw material, greatly retarded the development of the English silk industry, while only the markets of England and the colonies were protected for it. In that year the duty was reduced to 1 penny, and the number of mills at once largely increased. In a single year the number of throwing spindles rose from 780,000 to 1,180,000, and, although the commercial crisis of 1825 crippled this branch of industry for the moment, yet in 1827 more was produced than ever, the mechanical skill and experience of the English having secured their twisting machinery the supremacy over the awkward devices of their competitors. In 1835 the British Empire possessed 263 twisting mills, employing 30,000 workers, located chiefly in Cheshire, in Macclesfield, Congleton, and the surrounding districts, and in Manchester and Somersetshire. Besides these, there are numerous mills for working up waste, from which a peculiar article known as spun silk is manufactured, with which the English supply even the Paris and Lyons weavers. The weaving of the silk so twisted and spun is carried on in Paisley, and elsewhere in Scotland, and in Spitalfields, London, but also in Manchester and elsewhere. Nor is the gigantic advance achieved in English manufacture, since 1760 restricted to the production of clothing materials. The impulse, once given, was communicated to all branches of industrial activity, and a multitude of inventions wholly unrelated to those here cited, received double importance from the fact that they were made in the midst of the universal movement. But as soon as the immeasurable importance of mechanical power was practically demonstrated, every energy was concentrated in the effort to exploit this power in all directions, and to exploit it in the interest of individual inventors and manufacturers, and the demand for machinery, fuel, and materials called a mass of workers and a number of trades into redoubled activity. The steam engine first gave importance to the broad coalfields of England. The production of machinery began now for the first time, and with it arose a new interest in the iron mines which supplied raw material for it. The increased consumption of wool stimulated English sheep breeding, and the growing importation of wool, flax, and silk called forth an extension of the British ocean-carrying trade. Greatest of all was the growth of production of iron. The rich iron deposits of the English hills had hitherto been little developed. Iron had always been smelted by means of charcoal, which became gradually more expensive as agriculture improved, and forests were cut away. The beginning of the use of coke in iron smelting had been made in the last century, and in 1780 a new method was invented of converting into available wrought iron coke smelted iron, which up to the time had been convertible into cast iron only. This process, known as puddling, consists in withdrawing the carbon which had mixed with the iron during the process of smelting, and opened a wholly new field for the production of English iron. Smelting furnaces were built 50 times larger than before. The process of smelting was simplified by the introduction of hot blasts, and iron could thus be produced so cheaply that a multitude of objects which had before been made of stone or wood were now made of iron. In 1788, Thomas Paine, the famous Democrat, built in Yorkshire the first iron bridge, which was followed by a great number of others, so that now nearly all bridges, especially for railroad traffic, are built of cast iron, while in London itself a bridge across the Thames, the Southwark Bridge, has been built of this material. Iron pillars, supports for machinery, etc., are universally used, and since the introduction of gas lighting and railroads, new outlets for English iron products are opened. Nails and screws gradually came to be made by machinery. Huntsman, a Sheffielder, discovered in 1790 a method for casting steel, by which much labour was saved, and the production of wholly new cheap goods rendered practicable, and through the greater purity of the material placed at its disposal, and the more perfect tools, new machinery and minute division of labour, the metal trade of England now first attained importance. The population of Birmingham grew from 73,000 in 1801 to 200,000 in 1844, that of Sheffield from 46,000 in 1801 to 110,000 in 1844, and the consumption of coal in the latter city alone reached in 1836 515,000 tons. In 1805 there were exported 4,300 tons of iron products and 4,600 tons of pig iron. In 1834, 16,200 tons of iron products, and 107,000 tons of pig iron, while the whole iron product reaching in 1740, but 17,000 tons, had risen in 1834 to nearly 700,000 tons. The smelting of pig iron alone consumes yearly more than 3 million tons of coal, and the importance which coal mining has attained in the course of the last 60 years can scarcely be conceived. All the English and Scotch deposits are now worked, and the mines of Northumberland and Durham alone yield annually more than 5 million tons for shipping, and employ from 40 to 50,000 men. According to the Durham Chronicle, there were worked in these two counties in 1753, 14 mines, in 1800, 40 mines, in 1836, 76 mines, in 1843, 130 mines. Moreover, all mines are now much more energetically worked than formerly. A similarly increased activity was applied to the working of tin, copper, and lead, and alongside of the extension of glass manufacture arose a new branch of industry in the production of pottery, rendered important by the efforts of Josiah Wedgwood, about 1763. This inventor placed a whole manufacture of stoneware on a scientific basis, introduced better taste, and founded the potteries of North Staffordshire, a district of 8 English miles square, which, formerly a desert waste, is now sown with works and dwellings, and supports more than 60,000 people. Into this universal world of activity everything was drawn. Agriculture made a corresponding advance. Not only did landed property pass, as we have already seen, into the hands of new owners and cultivators, agriculture was affected in still another way. The great holders applied capital to the improvement of the soil, tore down needless fences, drained, manured, employed better tools, and applied a rotation of crops. The progress of science came to their assistance also. Sir Humphry Davy applied chemistry to agriculture with success, and the development of mechanical science bestowed a multitude of advantages upon a large farmer. Further, in consequence of the increase of population, the demand for agricultural products increased in such measure, that from 1760 to 1834, 6,840,540 acres of wasteland were reclaimed, and, in spite of this, England was transformed from a grain exporting to a grain importing country. The same activity was developed in the establishment of communication. From 1818 to 1829, there were built in England and Wales 1,000 English miles of roadway of the width prescribed by law, 60 feet, and nearly all the old roads were reconstructed on the new system of Madam. In Scotland, the Department of Public Works built, since 1803, nearly 900 miles of roadway and more than 1,000 bridges, by which the population of the Highlands was suddenly placed within reach of civilization. The Highlanders had hitherto been chiefly poachers and smugglers. They now became farmers and hand workers. And, though Gaelic schools were